this many times before, and I'm going to say it again, because I truly believe that we are living in an extraordinary time. Given the technology around us, I think we can all agree that it is an amazing time to be alive. Perhaps I'm biased by the fact that I, like you, am entrenched in technology, making it easy to see, understand, and experience the impact technology has in our existence. And because technology excites us so much, we mostly find it easy to accept and incorporate innovative technologies into our lives with this subconscious hope that it will make us more efficient, effective, and definitely more capable. We happily bring in these new things without much effort. And this conviction is a mix with every step that we'll take with technology will also create massive opportunities for us in the future. Now, technology is the catalyst that empowers us to recalibrate our focus. It shifts us away from the old things that used to waste our time. With technology on our side, we set free from all distractions, giving us the freedom to focus on things that are much more important. Think about that for a second. Isn't it much more satisfying experiencing the symphony of flavors that caress your palate rather than spending hours struggling to open that single serving coffee sachet in your hotel room? Come on, we've got been to cut that, right? When we get it right, our life stories are no longer filled with boring stuff. Instead, it's filled with things that matter and things that have real value and real purpose. We keep embracing new technologies because it feels good to keep improving. We consumed that proverbial red pill and now crave that sweet taste of continuous optimization. And because we understand optimization well, we sometimes find it challenging to empathize with those who, in our opinions, might not grasp it correctly. For instance, I love driving. I especially like those long drives, the ones where space and time are so far apart, you don't have a choice but to contemplate life, the universe, and everything. I love them because they enable me to think through the inquiries my inner thoughts frequently grapple with, such as, what would the color lilac taste like if it was frozen? Or, how do people who practice pure nudism clean their glasses? Now, even though I frequently view my morning commute to our Rosebank offices in the same light, I'm not referring to that, but rather taking a long drive from Johannesburg to Cape Town, where, as you know, we also have an office. Sadly, I haven't been able to convince my colleagues that this is a valuable use of my time. But similar to my relentless pursuit of understanding how to divide by zero, I truly believe someday I will succeed in persuading them. But it's a good thing I don't have a fear of flying, because for now, rather than driving, I more frequently than I would prefer end up taking a flight from Johannesburg to Cape Town, which with a favorable tailwind becomes a somewhat annoying 2-hour journey. It is annoying, not because of the flying itself, but because of the extra 3 hours on either side of the flight during which you are compelled to handle the matters that supposedly necessitate flying in the first place. This is precisely where my obsession with optimization is put to the test. And baggage drop-off is where it all starts. Now, these days, most airlines have a bespoke app that allows a traveler to book and manage flights. So it's not surprising that a traveler is offered with a plethora of air travel-related functionality, which includes online checking. That coincidentally also allows a traveler to select a seat from a configuration we all know, in most cases, does not represent the aircraft they will be boarding. The final part of online checking allows the traveler to specify whether they will stow their luggage in the overhead compartment or drop them off at the drop-off counter, and a selection of accompanying questions regarding that luggage then follows. Now, I'm the guy that selects drop-off for no other reason than I hope that someday my experience will be different. Sadly, there are many people like me, meaning that its intended design of shorter queues is rendered useless if everyone selects that option, which is, in most cases, my reality. Surprisingly, standing in that long queue of single-serving, like-minded individuals is less scary than eventually making it to the drop-off desk, where you're faced with this airport employee that is more than adequately trained by the Spanish Inquisition. That friendly, next please, quickly morphs into a fierce stare that would even have Pennywise shiver. Sadly, I've never had the guts to answer no to any of the questions that naturally requires a yes. They all start off with, did you pack your baggage yourself? Then, between the time you packed your baggage And arriving at this desk, were you in total control of your baggage at all times? Does your baggage contain any hazardous or prohibited items, such as explosives, ammunition, or batteries? Now, about this time, your mind is spinning and you start second-guessing your intention for taking the flight. You think, what if the baggage scanner reveals that the aerosol canister in my bag is 150 milliliters bigger than what is allowed? You quickly replace that thought with, am I taking too long thinking about this, rather than ceremoniously delivering that expected no? And will the artificial intelligence embedded in the security system flag you as suspicious, given that that slow and comfortable blink of a single LED light next to the camera lens, which is now focused on you, suddenly turned into this rapid 145 beats per minute stroke that coincidentally matches your heartbeat? You answer no, while waiting for the sudden and abrupt tackle by a security guard wearing nothing but SWAT gear. And again, as if nothing happened, you are released with a chirpy, have a nice flight, as they hand you a paper-based ticket, knowing that the one you downloaded during online checking using their app would equally suffice to allow you access to the aircraft. Oh my goodness. To make things worse, you board the plane behind some guy with carry-on that is obviously larger than what is normally considered hand luggage. Your sadness is nothing more than him being a reminder of the suffering you endured at that counter, knowing that he sacrificed the opportunity to share your experience for the odd chance of making it out of the airport first when you arrive. You are suddenly reintroduced to reality by the air hostess's friendly, don't worry, you can stow your luggage under our new slimline seats directly in front of you should there be no space. Realizing that the expression on your face and the fact that the oversized bag is now being forced between a Dell laptop and a ham and cheese croissant that was liberated from the airport lounge could have created this perception that you were annoyed. Don't laugh. Imagine spending a day in my head.
I've actually tried imagining spending a day in Tony's head. Good morning, everyone. My name is Linden Lucky Nkosi. For those of you that do speak Nguni languages, yes, that does mean that I have two names that mean the exact same thing. People often say that the most difficult part of computer science is naming things. My family doesn't struggle with this. My mother's names are Nomathemba and Faith. For those of you that don't speak Zulu, Nomathemba means faith. Nonetheless, Tony says that we should imagine being in his head for a day. Unfortunately, I live it. See, because I work with Tony, it means that I have to travel with him quite a lot. Now, Tony and I are different in very many ways. I mean, apart from our difference in swag, and maybe the fact that Tony has long, silky, smooth hair, while I normally keep a head so bald that you can probably eat of it. I think where our difference shines the most is in the fact that Tony is a morning person, starts the day very, very early. When I joined the team, our stand-up was probably around 7:30, and through some, social engineering, we've now moved it to 9:30. But this difference becomes a problem when we have to travel, because Tony will probably be the one unlocking the airport while I'm there just in time to catch my airplane. Now, traveling together is always interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, I almost always get stopped by security. And Rory just said, yep, in front, because he's witnessed it. I'm not entirely sure whom among us is the most suspicious looking one, but I never get stopped when I'm traveling alone. I've been stopped all over the world every time I'm with Tony. Apart from that, Tony arrives early while I'm late, and some people say that it's because of a symptom of ADHD known as time blindness. Good explanation, or good excuse rather. But I think the real reason is probably because I overestimate just how fast I can get to the airport without getting any speeding tickets. I heard some people say, yeah, I'm glad that I'm not the only one. But the big issue in this is that I also overestimate how fast I can get to my destination. When I travel, I often have an appointment or a meeting on the other end, which means that when I'm on the plane, I'm always worried about how long it'll take for me to get to my appointment. And I worry because I don't want to be the person that's standing there worried that my luggage might not appear on the carousel. I worry that it might arrive late, it might be broken or broken into. We are in South Africa after all. But I also don't want to be that guy that's just standing there at the end going, well, where on earth is this bag? So Tony hates the fact that I never check in my luggage. But have you ever considered that maybe there are very valid reasons, like waking up late, for me not wanting to check in my luggage? Well, the fact is, it doesn't matter how much we optimize or how much you try to optimize. If our optimizations do not recognize the genuine fears that people have, then they simply won't be adopted. We absolutely and quite often underestimate the impact of fear. Humans are not only creatures of comfort, but also creatures of habit. We find comfort in consistency and routine, and we stick to familiar patterns rather than seeking out new and unfamiliar experiences like wingsuit jumping and skydiving. And in most cases, I think we can attribute this behavior to the fear of the unknown. We're scared of what impact the unknown will have on our existence. And we often find any reason to avoid drastic change, like checking in my luggage. So Tony, you speak about this thing, but surely you've also got fears of your own.
Yes, I do. We may not all experience it in the same way, but fear is real to some people. The textbook definition of fear is that it is this emotional response to a perceived threat or danger. Now, given this definition, it can be easy to understand why some people may experience psychological responses such as increased heart rate, rapid breathing, and heightened alertness when encountering one of these babies. Equally, our sympathy extends to many of what are considered common fears, such as the fear of snakes or even the fear of heights. We can even accept the fear of the dark and the fear of enclosed spaces, as well as the one that I'm struggling with, the fear of public speaking. But I personally lose focus when we consider uncommon fears such as this one. Now, who would have thought who would have thought that an entirely predictable pattern could trigger an abrupt sense of fear or peril for someone? Now, equally, arithmophobia, which is an irrational and often overwhelming fear that can lead to anxiety or panic when confronted with numerical situations, calculations, or mathematical concepts. Now, do me a favor. Take a look around you, and if you see somebody shiver, please let your closest flight attendant know. I'm not judging, I'm here to help. I think we need to have a quick discussion after this talk about your life choices, because given that this audience mostly represents software engineers, and software is really all about patterns and numbers, you may want to have it checked out by a professional. I'm only joking, you are going to be fine. There is, however, another uncommon fear I'd like to mention, and that is technophobia. And no, it is not the fear of techno music, but rather technology. Now, technophobia comes in all shapes and sizes, but they all somehow relate to the continuous optimization that transforms something from manual to automatic. Now, as technology evolves, we see new fears emerge, and in some cases, re-emerge. For instance, job displacement as a primary fear that is commonly associated with technology innovation has been documented several times over the years, dating back to as early as the Industrial Revolution, which has coincidentally been a hot topic for several years now. Now, this life-changing event had such an impact. Futurists were able to build entire careers on it. They even went as far as proposing multiple occurrences by carefully selecting other radical, disruptive, and exponential technological advancement that showed significant impact. But they were clever about it. They versioned it. And if it was not for the fact that they were able to use this information to scare corporates into adopting large-scale digital transformation journeys, they would also be dragged into the town square and shot for heresy. Now note, I did not say the first industrial revolution, because I truly believe that there was only one. In fact, if Industrial Revolution had a theme song, it would probably go something like this. The Industrial Revolution was a period of significant social, economic, and technological change, marked by transition from agricultural and craft-based economies to economies that were born out of mechanized production and mass manufacturing. Humanity's fears were not purely about losing their livelihoods as automation replaced many manual jobs, but also about being able to adequately adapt and add value in this new automated environment. Now, these days, you cannot walk past the futurists without tripping over their 4IR stories. There is a huge amount of noise over the eventual impact the Industrial Revolution, or any of its variants for that matter, will have on society. But there's value in noise. Where there is smoke, there must be fire. There has to be a causal relationship between what occurred in the 18th century and what we are experiencing today. When we consider their biggest fear, in hindsight, we can now see that many more jobs were created than what was lost. And it is easy to see the value that was created despite all that fear. So, if you ever find yourself being reeled in by one of those crazy-looking futurists, interrupt them by randomly saying, bullshit. Electricity was a natural evolution as a result of continuous optimization attempts to improve steam-powered factories. Then simply sit back with your popcorn and watch the smoke come out of their ears. Another example of a reoccurring fear is not having control over that one iteration of the technology that came as part of a continuous optimization journey. Now, this fear can be traced back to the era of massive nostalgia and majestic hair. And I'm not referring to the 70s, although massive hair did make a massive comeback then. Now, towards the late 19th century, the introduction of electricity as a massive new energy source created many problems, for no other reason than before electricity, all everyone ever worried about was accidentally setting their hair alight while trying to blow out a candle, hence the invention of the candle snuffer. Now, electricity's introduction to households that could afford it quickly caused fears of electrocution and house fires. But humanity's greatest fear was the general loss of control over this new and powerful energy source.
Well, I can tell you that those fears around losing control of electricity haven't disappeared either. See, in true neurodivergent nature of enjoying juggling multiple things at the same time, like organizing escape, my undergraduate degree was in a unique program known as game design. See, I said it and things fell outside. Now, the interesting thing about this program is that it was co-managed and co-run by the Wits School of Arts and the Wits School of Electrical Engineering, which meant that half of my courses were filled with awe-inspiring, spiritually uplifting BA courses, while the others had maths, physics, electric circuits, electromagnetic systems, and the likes. But since the electrical engineers, even they themselves know just how difficult it is to control electricity, they made us do a beginner course in first aid. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this was to make sure that we can help ourselves when things go wrong, or if they just wanted to make sure they didn't have to get involved when things went wrong and they would have plausible deniability. But even though it could be argued that the fear of electrocution was valid for very, very many years after that, I think the more we learn about electricity, the more we realize that our fear of not having control over it, rather, is founded in the fact that we do not understand it correctly. In hindsight, we never actually needed to have full control and understanding of it, but rather we needed to accept it and embrace the potential and exponential value that it had to offer us. Speaking of being unable to control electricity, let's talk about Eskom. So Eskom came to mind recently. For those of you that are joining us from outside of South Africa, Eskom is South Africa's national power utility. They came to mind because I came across a tweet. The tweet read, "Breaking. Texas declares electricity grid emergency amid heat-driven surge in power consumption." They feared that there might be a possibility of blackouts and it might be needed. What I found funny about this is that the first response to this tweet was, "South Africa, is that you?" For our international audience, that's because here in South Africa, we've been dealing with rolling blackouts for almost 2 decades now. Now, Eskom may not seem to be good at maintaining their infrastructure, expenses, or even producing enough electricity to keep us warm. I think that they are damn good at ensuring that all South Africans are equally annoyed. So good at it that they've even introduced a radical and innovative term to describe this equal distribution of annoyance. And we called it load shedding. Again, naming things isn't a problem here in South Africa. Personally, I think if they'd spent just a few more minutes, they probably would have naturally come to a better term. A term that describes it, with a bit more pizzazz. And I think a more appropriate term would probably be power nap. Think about it for a second. Sorry, Tony, I can't check in my luggage because I won't make it to the airport in time since I have a power nap between 2 and 4. I think it works in a number of situations. But Nonetheless, load shedding is actually very serious. It's serious, and it is the last step towards protecting us from complete grid collapse. But its impact on people's lives, like myself, who was late this morning, and businesses in all sectors of South Africa's economy, is quite significant.
You know, one of these businesses is Nanos. I absolutely love Nanos, which started in South Africa in 1987 and has grown into this internationally recognized fast food chain with more than 1,200 outlets in 30 countries. Now, they are less renowned for their chicken than they are with the ads. And my favorite Nanos ad is this one. Check it out.
Tonight we bring you a very different story. Let's meet Ishmael Kominati and his family.
Welcome, John. I've seen him on TV. Give me a moment. It's Honey Manifesto time. Honey Manifesto. Stage 4.
This is our genderator.
It's called Andre. That's for sure.
This one's called Cupboard. This one's called Kusile.
I love our Arctic chamber.
We don't have to go outside to freeze. We can freeze right here.
The cold water makes me feel alive.
Cold water is good for the veins.
Tightens up everything.
It's great for having tea.
Please, stage 4.
Okay, with stage 4, you get 4 free sides.
Stage 4 load shedding will be extended by 9 days.
When days are dark, sides are many. I'm Shahan Ramkisur.
You've got to love Nando's.
CR17 model. Should work, but it doesn't.
Super funny.
Now, I don't know if you saw this, but Eskom actually replied. Eskom isn't as witty, but they hit back with a tweet that said this. Hey, Nando's, thanks for the grilling. We're trying our best to keep the lights on so that you can keep on selling your chicken. Now, I kept pondering about why such a big state-owned enterprise like Eskom felt the need to respond to Nando's. Then I realized that Eskom felt the need to respond because Nando's advertising is highly impactful in South Africa. And it's impactful because they always relate to the country's current affairs. And they do this through media that the youth can actually engage with. Some might actually argue that Nando's plays a big role in shaping public discourse. And I find this interesting, rather, because similar things have been said before. When television and radio became popular, the fear of this technological advancements ranged from the negative impact on mass media, on society, people worried that it would make us dumb, to concerns about propaganda, the loss of privacy, and what is by far my absolute favorite, mind control. Now, the potential for mind control is something very fascinating. Radio and television provided many opportunities to optimize historic communications and marketing approaches. And I think we should keep this here for a while. But I think radio and television revolutionized marketing, which took us from ads that looked like this, where it's just a poster telling you to try and buy some Coca-Cola, to this incredible video.
Yeah, there's just nothing like ice skating. It was wonderful fun way back in our grandparents' day, and it's still the favorite winter recreation, enjoyed by young and old everywhere. Now, time hasn't changed the fun of ice skating, nor the need to stop now and then, rest up, and refresh. And for fast refreshment, there's just nothing like a frosty bottle of Coca-Cola. So tangy in taste, so ever fresh in sparkle. Coke has a distinctive flavor that's never been equaled. And the way Coca-Cola brings you back so refreshed so quickly. For Coke offers a bit of wholesome energy. Gives you a bright little lift just when you need it. In any season, enjoy bracing, ice-cold Coca-Cola. Perfect refreshment anytime.
I suddenly feel like a Coke. Don't you want to get somebody to get
Now, despite producing poor quality videos, Coca-Cola, thanks to this guy, James Vickery, supposedly increased the sale of Coke by over 18% and the sale of popcorn by almost 60% by simply inserting the words, eat popcorn, drink Coca-Cola into a movie. You know, in a cinema, much like the one you're sitting in today. Now, the words appeared for a single frame, allegedly just long enough for the subconscious to pick it up, but not long enough for you to be aware of it. Now, They called this thing the 25th frame hypothesis. Vickery's stats turned out to be a bit of a lie, but the concept of subliminal and suggestive advertising continued on for many, many years thereafter. And I'm sure that a lot of us in this room, our slightly experienced people, have also been victims of the subliminal advertising.
Now, I have an example. I remember taking a flight to visit our family in the Netherlands with my dad during the early 80s. It was my first flight ever. And I was actually looking forward to spending that 14 hours it required to travel that distance on something every 7-year-old boy thought was amazing. The Boeing 747-200, often referred to as the jumbo jet. Now, for me, the most amazing thing about the jumbo jet was not its sheer size or the fact that that thing actually stayed out there, but that it had a TV with movies all the way up in the aisle. And you did not have to pay to watch. Come on, we not think that is exciting. Anyway, I remember boarding this amazing aircraft and was quickly escorted by this tall air hostess to the seats that my dad's purposely and specifically chose for us. I was super excited because I had a window seat, meaning that I could look outside whenever I wanted. But more importantly, I could almost see the TV. Now, those days, one of the most played ads was this one.
The next best thing to a Lexington is another Lexington. Now, if you like your smoke with flavor, friend, with an honest-to-goodness tobacco blend, the greatest combination yet is you and a Lexington cigarette. Lexington, that's the one.
Now, in hindsight, I truly believe that mind control was possible. Imagine yourself as a 7-year-old kid stuck in the window seat, right in the middle of a smoking section on an aeroplane. And every time the Lexington ad played during your 14 hours of anguish and suffering, everyone would light up.
Yeah, while Tony was speaking, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, Tony's old. Tony lived in a time when people would smoke cigarettes in an aeroplane. I always thought that those lights were just, for decorations. But, but nonetheless, recently I was having a conversation about this, and someone told me that they used to smoke inside a grocery store. I know, right? Well, I'm glad that things have changed, and I think they've changed for the better. You can't even smoke in your own car nowadays. Imagine what that's doing for the used car market. But I think Tony's right. While TV and radio have been great optimizers of communication, there are tons of examples of how they can be abused. If we reflect on the fears that were introduced by radio and television, we now realize that the fact that fear was not specifically around any one thing, like propaganda or mind control, but rather that those fears pointed us to much more serious things, like considering the ethical use of the enabling technology. We now understand the dangers of subliminal advertising, and we realize that we cannot just optimize for the sake of optimizing. We now have come to learn that in some instances, the pursuit of optimizing or attaining efficiency and improvement might not necessarily be in the best interest of humanity as a whole. Now, while optimizing and efficiency are often desirable goals, there are times when focusing solely on those goals could have negative consequences on people and society at large. I think it's important for us to find the balance between optimizing and chasing efficiency with safety.
Equally, we need to be using that optimizing technology within those boundaries, because if we don't, we realize the fears that came with the invention of nuclear power, such as nuclear accidents, radiation exposure, and the devastating consequences of nuclear warfare. On April 26, 1986, one of the worst nuclear disasters in history happened. An explosion and subsequent meltdown of reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear plant in Ukraine led to a catastrophic release of radioactive materials into the environment. Now, even though the disaster prompted major changes in nuclear safety protocols and regulations that ultimately resulted in increased scrutiny of nuclear power facilities across the world, on April 26, 1999, it happened again, but this time in a different location. This time in Benoni, of all places. Now, for those of you that do not know, Benoni is a major city in South Africa with suburbs such as Johannesburg and Pretoria. It is coincidentally also the birthplace of some well-known individuals like Charlize Theron, Charlene, Princess of Monaco, Brian Abana, Grace Mugabe, and of course, the infamous Tony van der Linden. It was during my final, and I, together with 2 other students, had to complete a stock management solution we had been working on for weeks. I had the responsibility of completing that final compilation and packaging the solution on several stiffy drives that before then provided the primary storage of my music library. I was super proud of them. A collection of 5,600 MIDI files covering my eclectic taste in music. Now, MP3 was not a thing yet, and sadly, MIDI did not carry any voice, meaning that you had to sing along to get the real effect. Anyway, I remember doing the final check, and the code was something like this. Don't laugh, COBOL was a real language. Now, while the COBOL engine was desperately trying to make sense of my source code, its best attempts were suddenly interrupted by the notorious blue screen of death, but not the one you're familiar with. It was a Microsoft Windows empty screen looking something like that. Well, as you do in those situations, you hold the reset button for about 5 seconds and restart that machine. But to my absolute astonishment, it never started again. Do you know what happens next? You are forced to reinstall Windows 95 using a total of 28 stiffy disks, a painful exercise by itself. Now, some hours later, I had the operating system back up and reinstalled the COBOL environment. And again, as I started loading the source code from the 2 stiffy disks the 3 of us used to share our code, the same thing happened again. Dead as a dodo. Now, I attempted the sequence again in the desperate hope that the 3rd time luck would favor me. And at about 1:30 the next morning, everything was up and stable, and I could package the code. I later learned that a stiffy disk containing the source code contribution of a member of our team was infected with a Chernobyl virus that, on the anniversary of the nuclear disaster, would attempt to rewrite parts of the system's BIOS, rendering the computer totally unusable. Now, to this day, on April 26th, I take a moment to reflect on a day I truly lost all my bits. Then celebrate our obsession with continuous optimization and evolution of stiffy disks to source code repositories.
Tony asked, do you know what happens when it crashes? My answer would have been git reset. But interesting fact, I've never actually used a floppy or a stiffy disk in my life. Again. Now, the amazing thing about the technology and optimizations that fueled the evolution of computing hardware that allows us to use, real repositories. And the internet is the fact that all of that computing power now fits in my pocket. But we forget that as computers and the internet became more prevalent in the late 20th century, fears emerged around automation, privacy breaches, cybercrime, and of course, the addictive nature of digital technologies. There's also concerns about just how much information we were taking in, which is something that I find quite interesting, especially when my mom shouts at me, too much on your phone. I find it interesting because a respected Swiss scientist might have been the first to raise the alarm about the effects of information overload. In a landmark book, he described how the modern world overwhelmed people with data, and that the overabundance was both confusing and harmful to the brain. It's worth noting, though, that this scientist had never once sent an email, not because he's that efficient, and he was completely ignorant of computers as well. It's not because he was a technophobe either, but because the scientist, named Conrad Gessner, died in 1565, long before phones were ever invented. See, Gessner's warning referred to the seemingly unmanageable flood of information that was unleashed by the printing press. History is riddled with many such examples, where each generation reimagines the dangers or the dangerous impact of emerging technologies on the mind and the brain. Socrates famously warned against writing, citing that it would create forgetfulness in learners' souls because they will not be using their memories anymore. The Socratic warning has been repeated many times since. The older generation warns against the new technology and bemoans that society is abandoning the wholesome media that they themselves have grown up with. They do this seemingly unaware that the same technology that they celebrate was once considered to be harmful when first introduced. Similar concerns arose around the 18th century when newspapers became commonplace. This French statesman, my French is currently offline, so I won't attempt his surname. He rallied against the fashion of getting news from paper. He argued that it socially isolated readers and detracted from the spiritually uplifting group practice of getting news from the pulpit, much like how you are doing right now. Excuse me. Yes, I scared my sneeze away. In 1883, an article was released in the weekly medical journal called The Sanitarian. This article argued that schools exhaust children's brains and nervous systems with complex and multiple studies, and it ruins their bodies by protracted imprisonment. As someone who just finished school, I agree. Meanwhile, excessive study was considered to be a leading cause of madness in the medical community. It is worth noting, though, that this is the same medical community that used to diagnose people with ghosts in their brains and prescribe cocaine to deal with them. So we must take it with a pinch of salt. Radio wasn't safe either. The wireless, or the Wylens, as my grandmother used to call it, Wylens. It was accused of distracting children from reading, and it was also accused of causing diminishing performance in schools. Now, both of these things are now considered to be more appropriate and wholesome forms of media, well over Twitter or X and other media of choice. Now, the interesting thing is that the internet also had very, very similar things. We saw headlines from the likes of CNN claiming that email hurts IQ more than pot. It ranged from that to articles that said that Facebook was making us immoral. And of course, my personal favorite, which came from the Daily Mail, which said that, wait for it, Facebook causes cancer. Now, all of these were propelled by the advent of the internet. The internet has also optimized the way that we collaborate, the way that we work, and it's given birth to new ways, rather, of thinking, working, and living. This optimization supported exponential growth in collecting information and the bodies of knowledge. A lot of people benefited, especially those that support research initiatives. So it should not be a surprise then that advances in genetic engineering and biochemistry resuscitated some of those familiar fears. Fears such as the ethical implications and the effects of unintended consequences.
But come on, no one can argue that Dolly the sheep was not a good idea. Sadly, she did not make it past the age of 6. But there were several other attempts that demonstrated the therapeutic potential of gene splicing, such as Polly and Molly. You must love the names. Like you said, naming things are super complex. But this also implies that should your name be Holly, I suggest you check your body for a stamp that says the Roslin Institute. If you find one, we should probably talk. But imagine the possibilities. Imagine cloning lamb chops in your own kitchen. Having a barbie on the weekend, no worries, clone a couple of shrimp. But this knowledge changed what scientists thought was possible and opened up a lot of potential in biology and medicine, including the development of personalized stem cells. And it is here where some real ethical concerns are raised. Think about that. Think about the potential of your own bespoke designer baby. But I must admit, the birth of Dolly in 1997 made me super excited. I already knew then that I was almost perfect. An exact clone of me would have been a great gift to humanity, right? However, I have a list. Don't you think it's super cool? Why would anyone put the letter S in the word you need to say to explain it? Anyway, the idea of correcting the speech impediment with slight gene modification was the answer. So after many years of saving the extra cash I made by busking on the street, I gave up on that idea. And my decision was related to affordability, largely due to the fact that I'm fortunate enough to inherit many of my dad's attributes. And because he was Dutch, I ended up being stingy as well. Sorry, allow me to rephrase. Dutch people are not stingy. They are merely extremely selective over what they will pay for and how much it should cost. You're an amazing audience in the Netherlands. Je kunt me 'n klap geven als ek op die dag op besoek kom. Anyway, my decision to abandon my original approach of producing offspring that are modified close to myself meant that I had to reproduce the old conventional way. But I must admit, my personal son is by far a better version of me. Imagine what it would be like if we could all afford to do this. Try to imagine the ethical problems when this awesome new power is not used for good.
Agreed. And this is exactly what I think the noise around AI is about. Again, fears about AI technologies, which include machine learning and autonomous systems, are largely around the impact that it will have on employment, privacy, cybersecurity, and of course, the terrifying potential for AI surpassing human intelligence and control. But when you consider the fears that tech advancements raised since the beginning of time have had, it's easy to realize that they're all somehow related. In fact, even though they have dissimilar names, they all relate to three core parts of our being, namely our value, our ethics, and of course, our absolute need for control. We ask ourselves, will this new technology make me redundant? Someone said yes. Can someone use it against me? And is there a way that I can control and protect myself from it? For those of you that can't see, there's Rory Prady here, who's working on AI sitting in front of me, saying, yes, it's going to replace me. Now, the noise around artificial intelligence, especially from Rory, is deafening. It's so bad that several fights have even broken out. These fights are very interesting, and they've broken out for very many reasons, such as who is going to regulate this new powerful technology?
They're talking about fights. The upcoming Musk-Zuckerberg fight is quite an exciting one. Do you think? Who would not love to see two billionaires beat the living poop out of each other? Now, like any good South African from Pretoria, which is, as you should know by now, a suburb of Benoni, Musk is relentless. And like any good Pretoria boy, he does not give the impression that he'll walk away from a good fight. Yes, but
yeah. But my favorite part of this fight was when Musk posted on X, since I can't say tweet anymore, that he'll be instructing his new Tesla on its virgin voyage to drive past Mark Zuckerberg's house. His plan is, if the car stops there, he's going to walk up to his door and knock. If Mark, because he does this, just happens to open the door, then the fight is on the spot. He even X'd that he will be testing this new Twitter feed live streaming feature by making sure that he can live stream this entire fight to all of us in the third world in real time.
Yeah, I don't know what Elon is thinking. Perhaps it's the brandy and cola speaking, or he is super annoyed for being forced to buy Twitter and is looking to get rid of that frustration. Seriously, my boy, the Zuck does look like the type of guy you could walk up to and slap the living ginger out of. But don't be fooled by those beady eyes. The dude has a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which may be a combination of the samba, the lambada, and cracking coconuts open with your bare hands, but I would not risk it. You've got a better chance with the other fight you picked, which is with Altman, who coincidentally mentioned that if it was on, he would attend the cage fight as a spectator. But he also mentioned that he didn't think that he would ever take Musk on in a physical fight. But I don't think the thing between Elon Musk and Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, is as much a fight as it is their private race. Now, this race between these two giants, who coincidentally co-founded OpenAI, is to create a super intelligence AI that will save humanity from extinction.
But how do you go from a super cool chatbot to, the extinction of humanity?
Well, apparently we're not planning to. Their previous collaboration has fostered unprecedented levels of collective intelligence, with various research institutions, governments, and experts coming together to address the challenges associated with AI development.
Collaboration is very important. And I guess this open exchange of ideas, research, and best practices has already optimized progress. Guess we've seen things that have led to safer and more controlled AI systems. And given our optimizations in computing power, if we combine that with our ability to rapidly collect, store, and process copious amounts of information, we now see AI track its way up this very steep exponential curve. But human intuition is actually really bad at consuming exponential curves. It's so poor, so it's not surprising that given this weakness, we often fearfully say, GPT-4 should not be something we fear. But how sure are we that we shouldn't fear GPT-9? Perhaps this is what all of the noise is about. Well, Both Altman and Musk agree that AI development is, or if AI development is misaligned with human values or ends up in the hands of malicious actors, it could have devastating consequences for humanity as a whole. Altman was even quoted saying that mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority, right alongside societal scaled risks such as pandemics and nuclear war.
They generally agree on the topic, but the difference is that Altman, the reactive one, has adopted a super cautious approach and is now building an automated alignment researcher, which is essentially a superintelligence designed to control superintelligence. Now, unlike Altman, Musk, the proactive one, is aggressive in the way he's approaching the solution and has stated that there are two choices: either be a spectator or be a participant. As a spectator, one can't do much to influence the outcome. But where do we all fit into this picture? Well, we can be reactive or we can be proactive. We can be spectators or we can be participants. We could fear this technology or we could embrace the opportunities it will provide.
Sure. And I guess we've seen numerous examples where AI is already making a significant impact on the world by augmenting human capabilities. And this is happening in very significant ways, such as in robotic process automations, computer vision, and of course, machine learning. And we have these technologies deployed in various sectors, such as telecommunications, high-tech, and financial services firms. Just imagine the impact that these things will have on our healthcare system, cybersecurity, and even transportation. Wouldn't that oversized baggage guy appreciate the peace of mind knowing that his luggage will always safely and promptly arrive at its destination without fail every single time he checks it in?
He would, but also, would it not be easier to merely drop off your bags at an unmatched manned drop-off test, not having to stand in this long line of optimized, obsessed individuals, knowing that the AI that coexists around us will automatically, realistically, and ethically determine if our baggage poses any danger to our fellow passengers? Perhaps it would, but it can only become a reality once we make a conscious decision to change our mindset to favor the opportunities created by technology such as AI over continuously feeding the fears of, with the constant noise that is created by its existence.
The fears we uncover as we continue to optimize our world highlight how all of the noise that's associated with tech advancement often inspire a mixture of excitement, skepticism, and imagination. And as we reflect on our past, we might notice that what might have seemed like alarming possibilities often serve as a reminder of how much our understanding of technology and its impact on society has evolved. Like many things in our optimizing past, there's a lot of noise around the technologies we're facing in the present. As most of us might know, there's also a lot of value embedded in that noise, and there always will be. Our ever-evolving tech landscape will continue to make noise, and we, now more than ever, need to understand that there's value in this noise. We should rather look out for the opportunities that lie there. We should think about them really, really carefully. And while also doing that, we need to remain aware of its impact and consequences on society.
Hindsight is 20/20. And if we don't reflect on what we are supposed to learn from our past experiences, we will never be able to let go of the things we are frightened of. Change starts with all of us. And what I wish for all of us is to unclutter our perspectives of the future. So I'd like to ask the following of you. Once this day is done, and you are sitting on the couch contemplating everything you have learned today while holding that ice cold beer in your hand, consider the following. Instead of being afraid that this new and powerful technology will make us redundant, should we not rather ask, how can this technology help us to make our dent in the universe?
Instead of being afraid that this technology can be used against us, should we not rather ask, how can this technology help me maximize the positive impact that I have on others?
And once you've reflected on all of that, make a decision, take a deep breath, and step into your new life without fear. My name is Tony van der Linden.
My name is Linden Lucky Nkosi. Thank you very much and welcome to Escape 2023.
Have a nice life. Thank you.
Cool.